Has debate jargon become too much of a chore? Does every round you enter leave you wanting to know more? Well, look no further because one clap is the key. It's time for Professor Graham and Kevin's ABCs. Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Professor Graham's ABCs of Debate. I'm Professor Graham, here with my pal Kevin, and today the word of the day is going to be CX. CX, or cross-examination, or even crossfire, are all the names of the questioning periods that exist across the various formats of debate. The goal of cross-examination is simple. Make your opponent's case look like garbage. Well, Kevin, I do have just a couple of tips to help you on your CX journey. Tip number 1. Argue, don't ask. Despite not being in a traditional format, you need to start thinking about CX for what it really is. CX is just a speech. It's a limited time period for you to convey ideas to the judge. I'm well aware that you aren't going to be reading evidence in CX against your opponent's contentions, but you will be talking to the judge about why you think their case is garbage. Thus, CX is a speech. Because of this, we want to make sure that our questions are intentionally loaded with warrants. And when I mean loaded, I don't mean like when you go to a restaurant and ask for a loaded baked potato and they give you butter and sour cream. They best be bringing out the entire steak to put on this potato. One of my favorite examples is questions about U.S. leadership/perception. There's two ways that you could ask this question. First, you could ask, why do you think that the plan would improve U.S. leadership? Asking that leaves the door open for them to literally obliterate you for what their case solves for, because they're just going to re-explain the entirety of their affirmative and all of their solvency mechanisms back at you, and you haven't really advanced an argument. Instead, try loading your questions with warrants that actually make arguments for you. Same example, but now the first question out of your mouth is, given the 4 years under Trump's protectionist policies with trade wars, immigration bans, and nationalist rhetoric, the United States' lack of commitment to ratify international treaties like Paris, and China's rise as an international superpower based on forced interdependence with poorer countries, how do you think that the AF improves U.S. leadership? What does the AF say? Exactly, Kevin. Exactly. Now, the realistic scenario is that the AF is still going to dogmatically defend their positions and make up some nonsense. But remember, the goal of CX is to argue and advance arguments. You don't need to literally beat them in the CX of the 1AC, but you should be planting the seeds to help bolster the rest of your arguments throughout the debate. If you make those arguments in the CX and don't extend them after the judge was like, dang, that was a good question, then you're probably throwing. Tip number 2. Write out your questions in advance. Before you stand up, you should have a beautiful list of questions that you've been thinking about either before the round ever started or during their speech. And I don't mean questions that say, what does the F do? I mean questions like the example that we just used, chock full of warrants. You should be looking to do 9 of them. You'll find quickly that this is difficult to attain, and that's the point. 9 is the goal because we want to make sure we have upwards of 9 meaningfully important questions that we can start getting points on the board. This is to avoid those awkward situations where you ask all of your questions and you end the speech early. Beat this habit out from the source and write longer, more substantive, and better questions. Tip number 3. Prioritize and move on. There are going to be times where you spend too long on a question. That could either be because they didn't get it and you're just asking them over and over again, or maybe they're just taking forever to answer. You want to maintain the pace of the round by balancing letting them speak with obliterating them with your arguments. But that also means that you have to keep the rhythm up and actually make arguments. The other end of prioritization is remembering that you might just have more important questions to ask than some of the other ones. If they're running a counterplan or a critique, the first words out of the 1A's mouth should be, what is the status of the off? Because you need to know if they're conditional or not for the purposes of theory. Beyond that, maybe asking about their first contention is less important than the other because the first one was bad. There are always going to be times where you write a beautiful ninth question that may be so brilliant that you gotta put it first. So prioritize what you need to win the round. You don't want to be questioning positions that you're already obliterating them on. You want to stay focused on the positions that you're scared of, which usually means only questioning about maybe 1 or 2 positions in any given CX. Speedrun time. A. Stop asking your opponents if they could read a line from a card, unless it's literally necessary, like they're cheating or something. This will always bog you down. Make a big deal out of it in the rebuttal and stop wasting your CX time on this. B. Make CX matter. Don't ask questions that there won't be any following through on. That means, if you have one, communicating with your partner. There's nothing worse than being a judge, hearing one of the best arguments of my life in CX, and then never hearing it brought up again. Also, stop asking questions about dropped arguments. That's weird and pointless. C. Stop saying, if you make that argument in your speech, we'll answer it. And also, this is my CX. Like, bro, answer the argument, this is a debate. And also, if you ever have to say this is your CX, it probably isn't because you're losing. CX is awesome, but it is a tool that you have to be able to know how to use it well. Got anything to add, Kevin? Safer? I hardly know her. Hey, thanks again for watching today's episode of Professor Graham's ABCs of Debate. As always, I'm Professor Graham, that's my pal Kevin. Yeah, if you ever need any help with debate stuff at all, my email should be right up here. Just make sure you CC your coach. I'll get back to you as soon as I possibly can with any debate tips that you might need. I'll drop that knowledge on you. Bam. Thanks for watching. It's been a pleasure. See y'all later.